Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are doing a kind of a special video because we've been wanting to do a video like this for a very long time, and for whatever reason we just never got around to it. So finally we're going to do a water block installation to one of our RTX cards. This is specifically the Hydro Copper block, and it's going onto the RTX 2080 XC Ultra. The fact that it's an Ultra doesn't really matter because this would work for basically all of the 2080 cards and the 2080 Ti's and the 2070s for that matter, because it's very similar PCBs for a lot of the cards and the process is very similar. The water block, as I said, is one of our Hydro Copper units. These are really nice. These are full copper, full cover. They are nickel plated, so they're not copper color, but very high quality, nice RGB in them as well. And just want to show you that it's not too bad to do a water block install. It's kind of a big step for anyone in enthusiast gaming to go to a full open water loop. So let's go ahead and we need to get the box open, we need to get the water block open, kind of show you what's in there and what we've got going. Here is the 2080 itself. This is, as I said, an XC Ultra card. XC Ultra card is our 2.75 slot design, but when it comes to disassembly, it's not going to be any different than it is for the 2-slot design. And once you put the water block on it, they're both going to be 2-slot designs anyway. If you have a 3-slot card like this, or 2.75 slot, and you want to go down to a 2-slot bracket, we do sell an optional 2-slot bracket, so you can make your card fit the smaller PCIe bracket if you don't have room for, say, all three. And then move on to our water block. This one I did open up earlier, but kind of show you everything that's in here. Again, Hydro Copper. And here is the back of the block, the side that faces and actually contacts your GPU die, as well as the memory. You can see the thermal pads already pre-installed. They contact here on the MOSFETs, here on the top of the chokes, here on the VRAM all around the card. But this is a full hard acrylic here. You can see the fluid, so if you have a colored fluid, as most water loops will, you will see that running through the center there. The LED will also kind of set that off, so if you have like a neutral color or like a white, you can really get it to change colors really cool with the LEDs that are built into the top of the block. Allen key. We have your install guide, which is obviously very useful. This is going to be a bit of your Bible while you're installing this thing, but it's pretty straightforward. It's mostly talking about screw locations and the correct screws to use when actually installing it. So that's kind of our focus here as well, because that's what you'll need in order to install this thing correctly. All of the screws come in their own little bags. I believe they're Mylar bags, and the nice thing is that we label them all with part numbers, and those part numbers correspond to what's in that installation guide. So if you're not certain, you're looking at is that the same as the one in the photo, go off of the numbers. The numbers will match. There are different screws depending on whether or not your graphics card has a backplate. We do have cards with and without. Obviously this XC Ultra here does have one of our nice die-cast backplates, so this will use the one for backplate. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is actually pull the card apart. I believe you can do the entirety of the card, even though there's different size screws on here. If you use a Phillips head number 1 or a number 1 bit, you should be in good shape. And we're just going to remove everything. There is, I don't know if you'll be able to see that so well, but there is an inspection sticker on the back of the card. This is not a warranty void if removed sticker. In fact, when doing this water block install, you need to pull it off. There's no way around that. What this is for our team to know that the card has been opened, which obviously we're installing water block, so yes, it has been opened. And that's just an inspection sticker so that we know that the card has been opened, so that we can check it over, make sure that all the thermal interface material is good, that it's assembled correctly, so that if we were to bring this card in for RMA as an example and refurbish it or repair it in any way, we need to make sure that it's back into factory condition. So that's all that inspection sticker is for. Does not void your warranty. So here here is the bottom of our graphics card. We want to remove the 4 spring screws, and we want to remove all of the backplate screws here. I believe there's about 16 in total here, including the one underneath that sticker. We want to pull these all off with our Phillips 1 bit, just so that we can start to separate the card and get this cooler off to install the water block. As we do our disassembly here, we have the advantage of one of those really cool Gamers Nexus mod mats. Really cool because it's electrostatically safe, and also because it actually gives us a little diagram here to place all of our screws. Obviously you may not have something like this, but it's a good idea to kind of draw yourself. What I used to do, and what I've done a lot in the past, is I'll get kind of a piece of cardboard. I'll make an outline of my graphics card, and then I'll put a little black dot everywhere where there is with a Sharpie, everywhere where there's a screw, and then as I'm disassembling the card, I put those screws in their respective places so that when I put it back together, I know where every screw went. It helps it make it a little bit easier when you're doing the reassembly with the water block. So that is all the screws, and they're all clearly visible from the back of the card. There should be no reason you can't get access to all of these. And then that's really what's holding the card together, because we've removed both the back plate screws. So the back plate is connected to the base plate. That's kind of sandwiched between the PCB and the 4 spring screws that actually holds the cold plate and the entire large heat fin array and the fans to the card itself. So the only thing that's really holding this together, other than gravity, is the fan headers, the actual connectors for the LEDs and the fans. And you want to be careful because you don't want to tear those. So as you're pulling the card apart, make sure that you're lifting it very carefully and keeping an eye on where those wires are. Should be here and up here, so that you know that, and it may vary a little bit depending on what model card you have, or maybe you're not even putting this on one of our cards, but to just be mindful of the fact that there are wires that will need to power both the LEDs and the fans, and those need to be disconnected to get the card apart. And then the last piece that's actually holding this card together is right back here. So there's several screws on here. This is still holding the cooler to the card. So we'll want to remove those as well. Okay. And I've actually swapped over to a Phillips head 0 for taking off these, because these screws are a little bit smaller. Okay, so now that we have the PCI Express bracket pulled off the back, and the card looks really weird, it's pretty easy to pull apart now. This plastic piece on the front, it actually just fell off for me, but it'll come right off. It's just to hide the wires basically and to make it look cool. And then the rest of the cooler assembly itself, kind of like magic, there we go. So there you go. This is your entire heat stack array. Again, it's actually really only held in there with 4 screws. We tell people that it's easy to take off because it is easy to take off. And that's the whole point, so that if you want to get access to your card to make changes, like add a water block, you're perfectly within your right and your warranty to do so. So we make that as easy as possible. We still have the actual base plate installed. People ask what kind of the purpose of this type of base plate is. Let me move this into shot a little bit more. The purpose of this style of base plate is that it adds rigidity, so it's actually making a sandwich between the back plate and also this. So it holds the PCB in place and it keeps it from sagging, but it's also thermal. Now at this point you may think that it's difficult to pull it off, that it doesn't want to come off, but that is normal. The thermal pads will have adhered pretty well here, so don't be afraid to give it a good pull, because it will take some force to actually get this apart, get down to the actual PCB. Thermal pads are really difficult to remove in the sense that they always seem to stretch, so you just want to just lightly pull them off as best as you can, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world if they get a little bit stretched. Okay. And so now we have our base plate with all of its thermal pads. All of this is getting replaced with the water block, so this we can put off to the side. And here is the graphics card itself. This is a 2080. This is what a 2080 looks like. You'll notice the back plate is actually still on here, even though there's nothing technically holding it in place, but there are thermal pads. This is actually a thermally active back plate. So just as the suction of those thermal pads held the base plate in place, they will hold the back plate in place, which is kind of useful because we're not technically removing the back plate, so we want it to stay there. And it gives us a nice place to hold it without actually touching the more delicate PCB. So you'll notice I'm not really touching the PCB anywhere. I'm only touching this back plate, which is good for electrostatic reasons. Now the next thing that I'm going to want to do is I actually want to clean off the thermal paste that's already on here. Again, when we're putting on the water block, we're going to apply fresh paste. There are a lot of great ways that you can clean off thermal paste. I'm actually just going to use lens wipes. I've used these many times in the past, and so long as you have ones that are just alcohol and they're lint free, it's a good way to clean them off that's not going to cause any damage to any components. All right, that's clean enough. Could I have gotten a little better around the die cleaning that up? Sure. Am I going to? No, it's fine. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get to the part here where we're starting to install the water block itself. You'll notice that all the thermal pads on here already have a little bit of a protective layer. Please make sure you remove that. So the next step of the installation here is actually to install the GPU bracket. The bracket is this metal piece. This is something that I've actually seen personally has caused some confusion for customers when installing this, so you do want to do this correctly. One side of it does have a little gasket on it, basically makes it non-thermally, or rather non-electrically conductive to insulate it, because it is of course a metal piece. So you'll see on this side it's metal, and on this side it's got a little bit of a black texture to it. That's that gasket that I'm referring to. You want to make sure that that gasket side is what's contacting your PCB. If that is contacting the water block, then the metal side is contacting your PCB, and that will cause a short, which in many cases will just cause the card to not turn on. Rarely will that cause any kind of serious damage, but it is possible that it could. So definitely want to make sure that you have it like this. You'll see it fits just around our die really nicely there. It's like a little picture frame, and it's held in with screws from the back. So you hold it in from the back, and to hold on the bracket, we're going to use the what are called the number 5 screws in the kit. These screws are ones with part number ending in 31. These are what we're going to use to hold on this particular bracket. And once you've got that first one in place, all the other ones should go in quite easily. It doesn't need to be very tight at all. There's no reason to have this be super tight. Okay, so now we have our bracket installed. Again, should look just like that. If for any reason when you install the bracket it doesn't look like it's straight, or you have it flipped over, make sure shiny side is up. And now it may not seem like we've done all that much, but honestly we are almost done with this thing. All we really have to do is get on our thermal paste, put our block, you see the header right here that connects all of our components together. On this PCB it is actually really nice because it is one connector, and this one connector will send all of the power as well as the signals to the LEDs and the LED power, so that you can get all of your obviously fans and your LEDs working correctly on the card. Just this one connector. So you want to connect that from the water block. You want to tighten up 15 of those number 4 screws. And I'll point those out when we get to that step. And then there is another nut here at the bottom, just as there was on the original. And that's really all it takes to get the water block installed. We'll get that PCIe bracket installed, and then you'll have yourself a fully water-cooled graphics card. For this step here, again, you are just connecting this connector right here to the front. It does have little tabs on the side, so it only goes in one orientation, and it's difficult to get this wrong. But like anything, just be careful. All right, So that's nice and connected. So obviously there aren't any fans on this water block, but it does have LEDs. And so now the LEDs are controllable through software. You can make any color, any 8-bit color that you would like. So that's thousands and thousands of shades. Actually, I believe it goes all the way up to 16 million shades because I believe it does have full 8-bit RGB control. So that is quite nice. And then next thing I want to do, remove all of these stickers here, all of these covers so that our thermal pads will work. And I'm going to remove this as well. It's a little plastic that goes on the front. Actually, just fold that up so that it's out of the way. And you do want to be a little bit careful when peeling these. There's no adhesive to it, so it's not really held onto the thermal pad all that well. But I can see here one of my thermal pads is starting to peel up. You want your thermal pads to stay nice in place, so just peel it so that the thermal pad does not go anywhere, because they're already in the absolute correct place for your graphics card, and we don't want them to move. But if you pull them at a little bit of an angle there, it helps the thermal pad stay in place. Okay, and here's our thermal paste. All right, there are millions of people on the internet and millions of opinions on how to apply thermal paste. For a GPU die like this that's going to make direct contact and kind of push it out, you don't need much. You can just get away with some here in the middle and it'll push out. If you really want to spread it around evenly all over the die, you can do that as well, but I am personally not going to do that. And as before, I'm using a Phillips #1 bit for this. You can use another size if you have one, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, should be fine. But #1 seems to work the best for this. And you don't want them to be tight at all, really, especially when you're first installing it. You want to get all 15 in there, and then once everything's in place, then you can start to tighten everything up. Okay, so now we have all of those backplate screws installed, and that's what's holding our water block down in place. That's probably the most difficult part. If any part of this is difficult, but everything is nice there. As you're tightening down screws, you just want to start finger tight, as I said, and then at the end you can go around and tighten them. And what you'll find, and what I found here, some of those initial screws that you had, even if they were finger tight, by the time you got to the end, they actually may be loose again, because the card is changing shape a little bit. It's conforming and pulling itself closer to that water block. So you may find that by the end those screws need to be retightened. So that's actually why you want to tighten twice. Let's go ahead and finish this out by getting our PCIe bracket back on, and then we'll have a fully assembled and working water-cooled graphics card. Okay, and now that we have the water block installed on the card and the back plate on there, we didn't put in 2 of these screws, and these are the ones here at the front, the very front of the back plate, because you need your PCIe bracket. It's got 2 little parts that stick up. Those slide between the card and the back plate, and then you can screw them down. So now we've got our bracket on there. The bracket is held on with more screws, so we'll put those on as well. So there we go. You can see right here, our bracket is installed and all the screws are on there. These top screws will not go into anything because this part of the cooler is kind of no longer there. So that is normal. But that is basically the card with the water block installed. Again, if you would like to get a 2-slot bracket for the water-cooled card, that is available, so you can purchase that separately. But let's go ahead and pull the plastic off. And there we go. So you can see the card. It's a very nice looking card. Very good thermal contact to all parts of all components of the card, whether that be the VRM, the VRAM, or the GPU die itself. This is a really nice way to keep your card running really cool and have it run for a very long time, potentially years and years and years, because it is cooling everything so well. I hope that this water block installation video was helpful to you. Sound off in the comments for any other kind of how-tos that maybe you're not sure about or stuff you'd want more information on about our products. We're more than happy to make a video about that and try to get the awareness out there about why PC gaming is so great. So thank you guys for this video, and we'll catch you in future videos and how-tos. You have a good day. RAM into the MOSFETs. The MOSFETs and the VRM in general actually has this section here. You'll notice it's a different color because it's actually, because my battery died.